Hello, everybody. This is Brenda Miller from Stampin' with Brenda. I'm a demonstrator in New Jersey, and I've been a demonstrator for over 25 years. I go live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time so that I can share new ideas, maybe refresh ideas for you. And today I have a card that I'm going to make for you using the Adorable Owls Celebration stamp set. And I just absolutely adore this set, but I'm also going to talk about some coloring techniques that you may or may not be aware of, and hopefully I'll be able to teach you something new today. So without further ado, let me swap over to my desk and show you what it is that we're going to make. So here is the card that I'm going to show you how to make. I actually did this card in my class on Friday. I do a Stamp-A-Stack in person every month on the second Friday of the month and the Saturday morning after. And I think that everyone pretty much really enjoyed this, but I did learn a couple of things just by watching everybody and listening to their discussions, and I wanted to try to answer some of their questions here. So without further ado, let me show you how to make this card. So we're going to start with a half sheet of the crumb cake cardstock, and I'm just going to fold it in half and score it. You fold it with my scoring bone. Now, the next layer is actually, oops, before we do that, let's go ahead and put our piece of white for the inside. As I've mentioned in all my videos that I do, I like to put a white card on the inside whenever the color is not completely a light color, so that when you go to write, you can use any writing utensil. And I always like to put the white on the inside first so that gets it out of the way and off my desktop. So here we go. We've got that in there. And the next layer is soft suede. Now this piece is, I didn't write down the dimensions, sorry. This piece is, let's see, 4.5 by 3.25. And before I go ahead and lay this down, I'm going to go ahead and die cut a large circle out of the center. And the reason I'm doing that is because I need a large circle as the mat for my owl. And rather than wasting cardstock, I'm going to go ahead and cut out that circle. And I've already done that through the magic of television. So here we go. We've got our layer. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down in the center of the card. And there we have it. So even though that circle is there, we're going to cover it up. And we're going to cover it with a piece of crumb cake paper that is embossed, dry embossed, okay, with this embossing folder. This embossing folder is called Timber, and I'm turning it sideways so that it looks like the lines on a tree, okay? So they go vertically. So I'm going to go ahead and place that into my embossing folder. And just as a refresher for those of you who may use our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, when you are embossing with what is considered a 3D folder, you see how thick that is? You don't use the regular plate stacking. What you need to do is remove all of the stacks besides the platform, put your paper inside the embossing folder, lay it down on the platform, and then use this dark gray plate number 4, okay, to emboss it. And once you do that through the magic of television, here you have a nicely embossed piece of crumb cake. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to put this over that hole, so now we will not see that anymore. Okay, so there we go. We've saved a little bit of paper, and we've got that. Next, I'm going to take a strip of, this is 4.5 by 1/2 inch, and I'm just using this kind of as sometimes I might use a ribbon to go across, just to add a little bit of interest to the background. And that is our card base. Okay, so here we go. Now we're going to take, I cut out this circle, and I'm using the, let's see, these are the layering circles, and you can see how these would go one inside the other. And that's how I decided which ones to use. So I used this smaller one, and I actually cut out a whole bunch of these because I want to show you a few things today. So onto that circle. Now you could have stamped first, or instead just do like I do. I already cut it out just for simplicity. And I'm just stamping one of the owls. There are 3 different owls. Oh, I didn't show you the owls. How could I do that? I think I've talked about it before, but let's go back. Step back as usual. And here's our Adorable Owls stamp set. So you see there are 3 different owls, 3 different sayings. He's just so cute, and it is a very popular set. Okay, so I've got my owl here. Now, one thing to note is I stamped it using the Memento Black Tuxedo Black ink. And I use that because I'm going to use some of our alcohol markers. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between our markers. I'm also going to use a regular Stampin' Write marker because I don't have this color in my collection of Stampin' Blends. Okay, so I just wanted to show you. I went ahead before, so you can kind of see from my sample how cute he is, and then we'll color him in a minute. But I went ahead and I colored him using the same colors, which is Crumb Cake, Soft Suede, Balmy Blue, and then I did on this card use, this is the Mango Melody. So I went ahead and used those same colors from our just regular collection of markers. Okay, so just like the Mango Melody, these are the same colors that I used, and look what happened. Now, I swear I did not try to like color him messily, but it's really amazing the difference between the results that you get from the regular Stampin' Write markers and the Stampin' Blends. You can see that the Stampin' Blends are just so much smoother. And that's because they're alcohol based, and that shows the difference. So I really didn't like how that came out. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use the Stampin' Blends. Now, one of the things to note is the Stampin' Blends, just like our regular markers, they have 2 ends, and the recommendation has been coming out that you want to color as much as you can using the blunt tip as opposed to the brush tip. Now, one of the reasons for that is when you use the brush tip, it isn't as precise. It's hard. So it's okay for bigger areas, but it also uses up a lot more ink, and so therefore it tends to go dry quicker. And you can see that this marker is already a little bit dry. The other thing is that when I put these markers out in a class, I find that people tend to push very hard, and that's just because that's what they're used to using regular markers for. And unfortunately, that causes it to bend a little bit, and it just doesn't work as well. So let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the blunt tip, and I'm coloring it in. Now, when I color it, I am not, the world's best colorer. Okay, and as you saw on the other one, using regular markers, it comes out blotchy. But look at this. I'm coloring it exactly the same way, and it's coming out so much more smoothly. So I'm just going to go over the area that I did with the brush tip because my brush tip is it's not as good. And you can just see how the color just smooths together. Don't know what's going on with that, but here we go. So I know I'm going to take a minute or two, and it's a little slow, but I want to color in the whole area. I think I'm going to have to put my glasses on in order to see this better. But I'm using, this is the Crumb Cake marker. And if you're out there and want to comment on whether or not you've used Stampin' Blends before and how you feel about them versus regular markers, I'd love to hear from you. Next, I'm going to move on to the Soft Suede. Now, notice too, I didn't mention this, but both of these markers, our markers come in light and dark. Okay, so we have light Crumb Cake and light Soft Suede. And I like to work with the light colors when I'm coloring because I find that you can always go darker, and it's hard to go lighter. So I'm just coloring. Now, what I was starting to say before is that a lot of times when people use the Stampin' Blends, there is actually a technique, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes, but how to use the blends as actual blends. So in other words, they're designed to blend color. Okay, and that's when you use the light and the dark. But I tend to just use one or the other, depending upon the tone that I'm looking for, only because I'm not an artist. I just like to color. I like to get it uh, so in a way that I like the way it looks. Um, and of course, if he has a little bit of detail, so I'm trying to do two things at the same time. But you see how smooth that color is. And again, I'll show you, trying to use the same colors. First of all, you don't get to choose between a light and a dark. And also see how even whenever I went over an area, the color got darker or lighter or left white space. Whereas with the blending tool, the blending pens, it just flows very nicely. So let's just finish him off using, I'm going to use Balmy Blue for his eyes, just because, why not? I don't really know what color eyes an owl has. I didn't look that up. I probably could have. But I think he looks pretty with some blue eyes. And you'll notice that they went ahead on the art and left those little circles which show like reflection. And when a lot of artists, when they're drawing and coloring and painting eyes, they leave a white spot in the eye just to make it look a little bit more natural. But they do that for you, so I just did not color that in. And now I'm just using one of my regular Stampin' Write markers to do his beak, which probably isn't that orange in real life, but we'll go with it. Okay, so now that we have him, I'm going to take him and put him on the circle that we cut out previously. And then I'm going to add him to our card using a dimensional. I'm just going to use one for now. Place it down, peel off the backing, and place it onto my card. Now you can put him on an angle. Look, he is flying a little bit, so we'll let him fly. And that's how we got our owl. We're going to talk about him just a little bit more in a minute or so. So now we need to move on to our words, and I have that here. I just stamped it on a piece of white, and I cut it out, and it's crooked, so I'm flipping it over so I can show you the other way that you can do it. You can cut it out first and then stamp down, and hopefully I'll get it straight, but of course, because I don't have my glasses on, it might not be perfect, but the other side is better. We'll go with that. Okay, so for this, just so that you know, the die I used for this comes out of the Stylish Shapes. All right, and I'm just going to use a small dimensional, and I'm putting it on the back of the right side of the label, and I'm laying it down, and that way, see, here's the dimensionals on this side, so that it lays down, and I could put a little bit of adhesive there. Next, we have our, this is the ribbon that is in the collection for the Cottage Floral Lane, and I'm going to show it to you. Pulling it out, so much easier now that I can show you the catalog, but it comes in the two colors and widths, and so this is the Crumb Cake, and so it's called Real Red and Burlap Ribbon Combo Pack, and you get 5 yards of each in that combo pack. And I'm just going to use this, what I guess is the burlap ribbon, but it is the Crumb Cake color, and I'm just going to tie a knot really quickly here and give it a little snip with my snips. There we go. And with a glue dot, we will adhere that down. I don't have my glue dots over here. Oh, yes, I do. Sorry. I was more prepared than I thought I was. How about that for a change? All right. And then I just put a little glue dot on the back side. and I place it down on my card. So here we have that adorable little card. Now, what I'm going to do is color one more of these, if I can find the other circles that I cut out. Right here somewhere. There it is. Here it is. Okay, so I've got one more circle, and I want to show you how to do it using shading. Now, when you do the shading, again, you want to use the Memento ink. So you're really just coloring it the same way as we did before. However, so here he is stamped down, and I'm going to take both the light and the dark crumb cake so you can see the difference in the colors. So this is the light and this is the dark. And I'm going to start with the dark. And what you want to do, whoops, I'm going to have to use the scent, Best Laid Plans. What they want you to do is just kind of outline the area that you're going to be coloring in. And it looks like a harsh line right now. So I'm going to show you it that way. And then I'm going to take, again, my blunt tip, and I'm going to color. And what it does is it pulls just the littlest bit that dark color away from the edges, and it allows you to blend. And what's really nice is that you can go back over and over and over it, and it'll just blend a little bit more each time. So as you can see, this isn't a lot of space to work with to get it to blend. I didn't feel like we needed to do the blending, but I wanted just to show you how that would look. And what that does is it makes it a little bit more realistic. And you see how it's no longer that really dark line? It's just sort of like an accent, right? As you go around. So, oops, sorry. So you can kind of see that's a way of doing it. Now, I know that blends can be very overwhelming for people because they think that they have to color like this. And that's why I wanted to show you that you don't just use one of the shades and it just colors so much more beautifully and easily than using any regular markers. Now, that being said, should you want to have this stamp set or any lined stamp set, which is what I call this style, you can use any markers, right? You could use crayons, you could use chalks, you could use watercolors, you can use the Crayola markers that your kids have. Certainly, there's no rule saying that you have to use fancy markers, but as an adult, I like having the choice of these beautiful fancy markers to work with. It's always a pleasure. And I just wanted to show just another card made with the owl. I just colored him the same way. I used the same die and words here, and I just use some different I use some designer series paper instead of the embossing folder. So if you don't have that embossing folder, certainly don't have to do it. This paper is from the Celebration as well. This is the Dandy Designs. I just thought it was just so cute. And this ribbon is also available in the mini catalog in the On the Bay suite. It's white and balmy blue. And I just thought that was just a fun little card. Could also make a great baby card, which I noticed after I put it together, but it's also nice as an It's Your Day card. So I do have something for those of you who make it to the end of the video. I have a giveaway. So I have an Adorable Owls stamp set for one winner who does the following. What I would like you to do is, in order to be eligible to win this Adorable Owl stamp set, first of all, sorry, but you have to be in the United States in order for me to get it to you. But if you follow me on YouTube, and you can find me on YouTube at Brenda Miller SU, that's Brenda Miller, Stampin' Up! SU, okay? And actually, if you do the search with the @ Brenda Miller SU, I come up on that page. I think I'm the second one, and it just says follow. And if you could also go to Pinterest and follow me at Brenda Miller SU, so it's the same. I try to keep it consistent whenever I can. Do both those things and then let me know that you did it. I will put you in for the drawing for the Adorable Owls stamp set. I hope you will consider doing that. I really would like to beef up my list of followers on both Pinterest and YouTube. And to do that, I'm offering some prizes, and we'll see. Maybe I'll do another one next week as well. But uh, even if you can't enter, if you're not in the United States, if you don't mind going ahead and following me on YouTube and Pinterest, that would be great. And again, I'll put it in the notes, but it's Brenda Miller SU. And I hope that you got something out of today's lesson about coloring with blends and coloring with regular markers and using the Adorable Owls stamp set. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Thank you. Bye-bye.